Hello, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connect. Each of us has stories that help us to understand and to explain our world. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who have had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who have had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories that help us to better understand our world. And they help us to connect with each other. And Community Connections is about those people and about their stories. And I'm sure that you will enjoy meeting these amazing, amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and today's guest is a man with a lot of international experiences. He's worked with the World Bank, and he's been a wonderful participant in our community, volunteering and fundraising. He is the incoming district director for Rotary International, a thoughtful, responsible, contributing citizen. Welcome, Raj Rajagopal. Welcome to Community Connections.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm a simple guy. I just had a lot of opportunities in my life. I was born in southern India, in the state of which is called Tamil Nadu now. Basically, it's a state where Tamil is the mother tongue, which is way down south in the country. And I grew up in a small village. My father was a research specialist on rice. And because of that, we traveled around our state. But my education was done in a small village. I never saw an electric bulb until I finished my high school. But I had dedicated teachers. In fact, there was no high school in my village before I started, and they built a high school, and they were very dedicated teachers. So I had a good education, and then I went to college, and then I went to the Indian Institute of Technology, which is one of the premier institutions for engineering and technology in India. You might have seen shows on 60 Minutes and stuff where people like Bill Gates say that it's better, it's a combination of Stanford and MIT and stuff like that. Anyway, just had a good chance of getting in and doing my work and got my degrees. Then I came to the US for higher education, graduate school. I finished my graduate school and I was doing some work in Chicago, and somebody told me there's people looking for hydropower engineers in Ontario. So a guy who started learning what electricity was, and I said, okay, this is my specialization, so why not? And I applied, and I got the job. So I moved to Niagara Falls, and this is a company called Acres International, and they have changed their name now. But this company was doing a lot of work, both in Canada and overseas. So my first job was, of course, to design a hydropower station on the Madawaska River in Ontario. And when that was finished, they were asking me to look at projects outside the country. And since I'm basically deal with river basin management and water resources, so I was sent to places like Thailand and Brazil, and to Ghana, where we were actually building a dam in Ghana. And it was a construction job, and we ran a school for the children of Canadian engineers. I was a single guy, but they had recruited two ladies from Toronto to come and teach. And that's how I met my wife. And we came back to Niagara Falls, got married, and then continued to work overseas. And at that time, the United Nations, a specialized agency for development programs, they contacted me and asked me whether I would go as an advisor to the government of Ethiopia. So my wife and I said, why not? We might as well try this. And then so we went. And from the United Nations, I was then switched over to the Food and Agriculture Organization. And from the Food and Agriculture Organization, I was switched to the World Bank. At about end of 80s, my parents passed away, and we decided, you know what, this international work is fine, but let's go back to Canada. So we came back to Canada, and my wife's parents were living in West Van. So we came back, and we found that we cannot even buy a garage in West Van. So I started driving south and hit White Rock. And oh, this is a nice place, and we could buy something here. So that's why we bought something. But this was early 90s, and the bank called me and they said, listen, we want you. So I said, okay, enough of not doing international work, let me go back. And I started working for the bank, and I had a fabulous time. I did a lot of work in China, about 40 countries I worked in developing water resources, not for drinking, but for developmental purposes like hydropower or irrigation. And so White Rock was a base, but even though I never lived here until my retirement, and I came back from Washington, D.C. and started my retired life. And unfortunately, my wife left me. And saying, what am I going to be doing here? And then Gordy Sanga from the Ocean Promenade Hotel, where I was staying at that time, he said, listen, you better join the Rotary and do something, right? So I said, okay, let me go join the Rotary. And the Rotary Club of White Rock, they admitted me, and they were undergoing some internal troubles in the club. And all of a sudden, I was thrust into doing some things that they have been doing for 30 years, the Rotary book sale, which is quite famous in the city of White Rock. And I was made in charge of that. And then I expanded the program. So 2 years later, I found myself as the president of my club, which is kind of scary. Anyway, we did a good job, whatever, and then I'm now the district governor nominee. I became the district governor in 2022, July. But I'm going through a lot of training programs. And of course, when you are in the Rotary, you can be a rhino, which is Rotarian in name only, or you could be a participant and do something. And so we started doing a lot of work. And last year, we started this assisting the 2 elementary schools in the city of White Rock. Many people don't know this, but the playgrounds for the schools are not financed by the school system. The parents have to collect the money, and they take about 5-6 years to collect the money. And we said we'll jump in. And we collected $140,000 in about 8 months before the COVID-19 hit. But anyway, we were able to negotiate and reduce the cost by the manufacturers of the equipment. And with the help of the mayor of White Rock, Darrell Walker, we got the union, Laborers International Union of North America, LUNA, interested in saying that they will do the civil works as a community service. And so we have already deposited the check for the Peace Arch Elementary School for $63,000. And we are now moving forward to helping the White Rock Elementary School. And then, of course, COVID-19 hit, and all the churches were closed, and people were not allowed to have fellowship in the church programs. So Reverend John McMurtry approached the City Hall, and City Hall approached me and said whether the Rotary can do something. And so we started this Feed My City program, where we give a hot lunch every day of the week. It started with 3-4 days of the week, but as of last month, due to generous donations from a couple of people, we have been able to expand it to 7 days a week, with many restaurants participating and providing lunch at cost. So we started with about 15 people, but now we are around 40 persons. Some come regularly, some are just once or twice a week or twice. Anyway, we hope to continue this program until the end of this calendar year, when we hope probably the second wave would have come and gone, and maybe the churches may be allowed to open. But that's, of course, a question mark at this time. And I also got involved with Sources, and I'm on the board of Sources. Actually, I was on the board with you when you were the chairman. And I'm not on the Social Society side, which is actually doing projects, but I'm on the foundation side, which is raising money and making sure places like the Rent Bank and the Abused Women's Place and the mental illness place for the youth, these are funded and financed. And of course, the Rotary clubs also jump in, and we provided some $35,000 for the Abused Women's Place so that they could have all the equipment they need. So in a way, it's satisfying. The only thing that was annoying was when people said there are no poor people in White Rock. It is a rich community. And for some strange reason at that time, when I came back and when my wife had gone and all the stuff and I bought the house, I was coming from Washington, D.C., so where you took the metro and you walked. So in White Rock, it's such a small place, so let me walk. So I walked everywhere, and I did see people sleeping on the streets. I did see homeless people. So I used to debate people who told me that there is no poor person in White Rock. Unfortunately, it is not true. And there are several reasons for that. And this COVID-19, I know from sources that the number of divorces have increased, number of people without jobs has increased. And so there's a lot of community assistance required, even in the rich city of White Rock. And that's about me. That's it.
So how do you think, as you go through this, your experiences in growing up and your different job experiences, how do you think those experiences has informed or shaped you who you are?
Growing up, I grew up in India, as I told you, in southern part of India, and Indians are one of the most discriminatory people. They discriminate on the basis of religion, on the basis of caste within the same religion. And I have seen it in my village. And so these things leave an impression on you. The so-called untouchable people, I'm talking about 50s, 1957, 58, they had to have their own separate cremation grounds. And my village was located in an area where the Communist Party was quite dominant, and they wanted to break all these rules. So they brought as a test one dead body to be cremated at the place designated for the upper caste people. And the upper caste people came with swords and stuff, and the body was placed behind my house. And the police came, and they could do nothing, and they had to take the body back. And that's when up to that point, I didn't know that there was these kind of differences in society. I was just going to school and coming back. So these things, I remember that incident like it happened yesterday. I remember it. So those things leave, that's why when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, these have a personal meaning from my side. So I've been on the giving end, and I also know what it is to be on the receiving end. Now, in terms of my World Bank experience, the one thing was that we work in many, many countries, and everybody has a common aspiration. Every villager wants to have a good life, and they don't want handouts. They want opportunities, and if you give them the opportunities, they work. I mean, okay, many of these countries are poor mainly because the politicians are corrupt, and that is nothing I can do about it, even though we do try to convince them that if they increase the wealth of the country, they could be better off. So that's one thing common I found, that wherever you are, the people, they want a better life. And they're prepared to work for it. It's that they don't want a handout. Some people think it's a misnomer to think, oh, well, all this aid is going. And it's not aid is going, it's aid is going to the right person. And of course, how you implement it and make sure that it is going in the right direction, that's very important. And fortunately, with the World Bank, we have fairly reasonable clout for the different countries to make sure that they do not misuse our funds.
And it's a number of countries. I think Joseph Stiglitz, who won the Nobel Prize in economics a number of years ago, he was hired by France to look at other measures other than just economic measures in terms of subjective well-being. And I think Bhutan has a subjective sense of well-being. So in terms of that sense of happiness that you're referring to, or a sense of how I fit in and how things work, how you've seen a number of different countries and different ways of dealing with that. How do you think Canada fits in now, and where are the areas that Canada needs to improve in terms of being able to address that opportunity, that sense of hope that you referenced?
I think, I'm an immigrant to Canada. I'm a citizen in Canada, and I think it's a great country. And we do not have all the negative things that the Americans are going through right now. We are more positive, we are more inclusive-minded people. But we have had our bad history that we should remember. And when we talk about reconciliation with the indigenous people, it's not something we give them as a handout, and we should not give them any handouts, but we have to address the issue, that we have to accept that there were some things that were going wrong. And in the case of India, for instance, I'll bring it together. In the case of India, for instance, the untouchability, these people were not allowed to go into temples to worship. This was stopped by one man, Mahatma Gandhi. He started the program, and he called them, instead of untouchable, he called them Harijans, and Harijan means the son of Hari, and Hari is God. So that, okay, there are a lot of people opposed to that, and blah, 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 but it is still, it's now illegal, at least in India, to do these things, right? And the same thing applies, I think, with the indigenous community here, who are our prime, shall we say, target group for discrimination. And I think this here, we can do better. And we are attempting, and I hope we will succeed.
And you participated in Orange Shirt Day recently. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement and Rotary's involvement in Orange Shirt Day?
Well, there is a Rotary assisted group that was formed in Toronto, and it's called Honoring Indigenous Peoples. And its focus is on way forward, and not to keep talking about what went wrong, but saying, okay, actually the motto is understanding the past and moving forward. And this I joined. This I did not know anything about this group until I went to a Rotary International Convention, and I saw this group in one of the tents, and I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And oh, this is interesting. So let me join this group. And now our district, Rotary District 5050, is also officially a member of Rotary HIP, and they, being mostly in Ontario, they're doing a lot of projects in Northern Ontario in the Indigenous communities, even though here in BC, we had Bob Becker, who was an aide to the Lieutenant Governor. He's a Rotarian. He's a past district governor of District 5040, which is the Vancouver area, and he does a lot of work with the Indigenous communities. And this HIP has this Orange Shirt Day program, which is September 30th. So for the first time, I participated. And this person they had two people who were in the residential schools, and talked about it. I mean, some of these things is like my untouchability situation in India. Because these girls went to the school, and they were given numbers. One girl was 54, another girl was 34. So you became a number. You're not a person anymore, right? And how that affects a person is, I think, only those who have experienced it or who were close enough to experience it will understand. My dear friend Emery Doshdal, who has passed away, he knows this because he went to a school in Alberta where his father was the principal. And I think he was the only white kid or one or two white kids, and others were all indigenous kids. And so you can understand the differences. And so the Orange Shirt Day was quite inspiring. They didn't go into, oh, this happened to us, but okay, this is what happened, and this is what we would like to do. So it was quite inspirational. And Linda Jean Coyle, who was the district governor for our district, she also participated because she is now, we have formed, by the way, Rotary District 50/50 has formed a task force on diversity, equity, and inclusivity for the Rotarians in our district, and she is the chairman of this task force. So there's coming all over the place. Yeah.
And I think when you talk about 50/50, half of the district that you're a part of is American, so it's an international position with respect to Rotary as well.
And I can tell you, and I hope no American is listening, that the cultural differences between the US and Canada is very, very obvious in these days. In these days of race relations, it is very obvious that we have a completely different, not completely different, but somewhat different ideas.
And certainly in terms of influencing government and being active participants or citizens, I think one of the things that we pride in Canada and hopefully around the world is that citizens can get involved through organizations like Rotary or just as individuals to make a difference in our country. And it's in many ways, that's much more powerful and meaningful than it is a government or a government process doing it. And those actions and changes in government often come as a result of organizations and people who are committed out of a vision and compassion and caring. And certainly I think that is reflective of the experiences you're talking about and the comparisons you have between other countries and where you grew up and in Canada. And I think that's an important part of what it is being a citizen. And you, I think, exemplify that willingness to speak out and say what you want to say and not just say it, but live it and make actions happen around that.
Yeah, and one thing in this one, I'm glad you brought this up, but you know, in Canada, I'm sure it's probably in many of the developed countries, we take democracy for granted, and then we complain. No, in the last few years, the elections in White Rock, in South Surrey, the participation has been around 30% of the population, of the voting population. But as you go to India, 1.4 billion people, you see miles and miles of lineups for people waiting to vote. And that, I think, you know, in Canada, it would be good if more number of people participate. And I think, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Australia that has a penalty if you do not exercise your right. And because of that, you do get to be governed by people that you may not want to govern you, but they have been elected with a majority, but it is based on a minority population voting. That's not very good. But still, nothing to beat the democratic system, nothing to beat the parliamentary system, and we have a good chance.
I think Churchill said it's the worst form of government there is, except for all the rest. So no matter what system you get into, there are challenges and issues with them, but the more we get engaged, the more we commit, the more caring we are, the more we express our values, and in a meaningful way, I think the more we defend what you're referring to in terms of democracy and our way of life.
Yeah, and that's why we have people like you. I mean, you're an exemplary politician and educated fellow, and you apply your principles. You're not simply saying this for saying, but you apply your principles. So that's for us in White Rock, we are happy.
Yeah, and I think that we need to have that type of engagement, the type of engagement that you provide, and the experiences that you provide. Because I think living here all our lives, sometimes we get complacent, but your experiences around the world and being able to bring those experiences and comparing, as you just did, the untouchables, gives another context, another way of understanding, another way of appreciating what we do have, which sometimes we take for granted.
Yes, yes. I hope I can do that. Wherever I can, I am getting involved. But sometimes I get frustrated. But you know me personally, I'm known to be blunt.
And I think that's a good thing. I think that some people just go back and go into their little cubbyhole and hold on to that frustration without expressing it, without saying what should be or what they want. And certainly in a multicultural, pluralistic society like Canada, we have to have those many perspectives and points of views, and that's how we gain part of our strength. And I'm grateful for the things that you provide and people like you who stand up and say what they think and present that. I think that's what makes Canada a wonderful country.
Yeah, no way, no two ways about it. Canada is, I would say, the best country in the world, both economically, environmentally, and socially. Social justice, environmental justice, economic justice, I would say it's number one. Yeah.
So if you had a final message to leave to our viewers of Community Connections based on your experiences, the things you've been involved in, what would that message be for them?
Oh, I don't know if I'm qualified to give a message to anybody, but I would say that cooperating community is the best to have, and we do have that, and we should continue to improve upon that, and not let divisions, which are going to be there. I mean, we eat differently, we eat different foods, whatever, and that's going to be there. But let that not be a dividing thing. Let that be a unifying stuff. That we're all, as I said, if you go to Ghana, you go to anywhere, the human beings want to have a better life. So if we treat each other as a human being and respect the space, of course we'll have difference of opinion, obviously, but that should not be the focus. It should be what is common amongst us. That should be the focus. Yeah.
And as you described that, it is, we all have those common aspirations for ourselves and for our family, our friends, our community, and indeed our country. And you exemplify that. So Raj, thanks so very much for being a guest on Community Connections and providing insight and a perspective that I think is so important for people of our community. Thanks so very much. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.